Part 2 of the oil drum tutorial. In this section of the tutorial we're going to focus specifically on the unwrapping of this barrel. Because we've essentially just added lots of detail to a primitive model, 3ds Max will have already created a basic unwrap structure for this model. So this part of the tutorial is actually going to be quite short. Now the first step to unwrapping any object is to actually add the unwrap UVW modifier, and we can find this in the modifier list. If we select the drop down menu here and we scroll all the way down to the bottom, again feel free to press U. If you press U, it will actually drop you down to unwrap UVW, which is the modifier that we want. There are other UVW modifiers you can see here, for example UVX X form or UVW X form, UVW mapping clear, UVW mapping add, UVW map. These all have specific jobs within 3ds Max. But as this barrel is going to be something we're going to export, then we need to actually tell the barrel polygons or the data within this model specifically where we're going to draw or where material data is actually going to appear. So we left click on this and we're left with a new modifier. And within this modifier is a new set of instructions, a new set of tools that we can use. Now, for those of you who have never been in this particular modifier before, or have just forgotten what it looks like, at the top here we've got the selection types, and this is very similar to the edit poly selection types that you're familiar with already. We have vertex, we have edge, and we have polygon, and of course we have select by element toggle, which won't actually be enabled until we make a full selection here. Now in this instance I'm just going to start by opening up the UV editor, and within here you'll notice, and I haven't done anything special, this is the first time I'm opening the UV editor, you'll notice that the flat part of my cylinder and all the other parts are layered on top of each other. And this is 3ds Max helping us out. And in some cases this works. In most it doesn't, so don't rely on this particular method of unwrapping. For those of you who have never unwrapped before and are more interested in the specifics, then feel free to have a look at the crate tutorial, more specifically part 2 of the crate tutorial for unwrapping specific sections of your crate here, or your barrel. Now the first thing we need to do is make a selection. Now because I don't need to select anything specifically, any polygon specifically, I'm going to grab polygon and I'm going to select this toggle here, select by UV element, and what this is going to allow me to do is move large parts of my mesh. And to do this I'm going to left click on any part of this mesh here and it will select the whole lot, and that's this UV element toggle, which is really useful. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to one by one move these off of my grid. And you'll notice this one here looks a bit different from the other cylinders, and this is because this is of course the top of the cap. So what does this actually represent? The top square here represents the main body of our cylinder cap. The second horizontal section here represents the body of the actual oil drum. And of course that means that these two circles are the bottom and the top of our oil drum, and of course this circle here represents the top of the cap. Now these are not good enough in their current format. They don't actually represent the object as well as they could. In this instance this particular object is fine. We don't need to relax this one. We will, just to mitigate any problems that might occur, but for the most part this object is fine. It's these objects that we need to focus on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select them one by one. And what relaxing will do is it will essentially match the UV space that each polygon has got with the real world space that each polygon has got. And what this will hopefully allow us to do more accurately is create a 2D flat material, a 2D flat texture here that will translate hopefully perfectly and seamlessly to this barrel. And that is what we're looking for. So let's start relaxing. I'm going to select the main body of the top cap here, and I'm going to come to tools and I'm going to relax. And what this is going to allow me to do is flatten this out. Now rather than edge angles, we want polygon angles. Edge angles is going to give us some undesirable results at this point. We want to relax by polygon angles. Once we've made this selection, if we just click start relax, you'll notice that this object pops out quite quickly and we can just move this away. I'm then going to move on to the next object down. Please note you don't have to close this relax window in between each object here. That was just a noob mistake I made. We can just click Start Relax, and what we want is to keep this moving, or to keep it active all the while that shape is stretching out, because all the time it's got movement to do. There's always going to be part of the object here that isn't perfect. Now I'm going to select each one of these. We can select all of these together, and I'm just going to click Start Relax again, and you'll notice that quite a lot changed. Firstly, the cylinder here is now very, very small, and this cylinder here, was hiding the internal edges of the oil drum. Now, I know what you're looking at and what you're thinking, that some parts of this are really large and some parts of this are really small. And if you are thinking that, then excellent. If you're not, then hopefully you're looking at that and going, oh yeah, why didn't I think of that sooner? What this represents is the exact space each one of these is going to take up in UV space. We will eventually fit these into a map and render it out, but in their current configuration, this object here would take up more space than this object here. And long story short, what that basically means is that this object here will have a higher resolution material than this object here. Because as you can see, there's more space in between each polygon, which means there's more space for us to add pixel data, material data, lighting, shadowing, than there is on this here. And we need to equalize this, because most people are not going to be looking at the side of this cap going, oh, that looks really nice, it's really well done. They'll be looking at your barrel going, oh, that looks lovely. Now luckily within the UV editor there is a tool that will rescale all of this. It's called Rescale Clusters, and to do that I'm going to select everything, come to Tools, and I'm going to rescale clusters. But just bear in mind, guys, you can marquee everything to select. If you don't want to do that, just press Ctrl A and that will select everything. Once everything's selected, we come to Tools, Rescale Clusters, and what will happen is it will kind of explode on you. This isn't a problem because we've got UV elements selected, so I can just begin to move some parts of these around. Okay? And what I'm going to begin to do is try and position this as I will position it in the UV editor. So I've just moved the top and the bottom sections of my barrel on top of the horizontal sections. This just basically means that this is really easy to identify that these belong to the same object. So if you're the one that's unwrapping but not the one texturing, then it's quite clear to tell what's going on here. And the next step is to scale this down so it fits inside this little box. Anything outside this box, as mentioned in the previous Crate tutorial, will not be rendered, so we need to make sure it fits. And to do that, I'm going to use a scale tool, and I'm going to scale this down. I'm going to use the move tool to move it into place. And I'm going to wheel mouse forward just to scroll in. I'm going to scale this down and move it into place. And what we don't want is anything overlapping this line here. Now, because everything fits relatively nicely, and there's not a lot of extra space we can give anything, we can begin to scale up the cap geometry here. Obviously, it's probably not that obvious to notice that if something is smaller, if you take this into Photoshop, it's going to be quite difficult to texture something that's really, really tiny. So, although it is important to make sure that everything is scaled correctly, as long as it's not at a detriment to the main object, you can scale things up individually and not worry too much about unifying things. The next step is to come to Tools, and we need to render out this UV template. And we leave it at 1024 by 1024, and we'll click Render UVW Template at the bottom. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on the floppy disk in the top left hand corner, and I'm going to navigate to a folder that I obviously created before I started this. Choose a file format, and I'm going to call this one oil drum underscore UVW. And that pretty much wraps it up for part 2.